Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options in Play video update. Hope you all had a fantastic weekend. Uh, as the calendar kind of shifts towards mid-August here, we are now kind of getting through the heart of earnings season, and now we're getting into that retail portion. Still plenty of non-retail names. Like there's still gonna be a lot of tech names coming up, a lot of software, which typically come at the latter portion or the end portion of earnings season. So we still have a bunch of software. This week we'll have a bunch of China internet plays, right? And we're gonna have a couple more chip names, so like Nvidia and EMAT, which I'll get to in a second. And what you're gonna probably gather from like the general tone of this video is that I feel like this could be a little bit more challenging of a week, just because of the broad majority of names reporting all have some sort of near-term fundamental headwind because of like this tariff talk, right? Like retail, China names, semis. So I think it just presents a little bit more challenging of a week for earnings plays. It doesn't mean that there aren't some interesting ones, but just generally speaking, it seems like it could be a little bit more choppy of a week. Definitely have to be selective, all right? So after the close tonight, we have Tencent Music, TME. We're looking for about a point and a half on this one. We've tried this actually like the first two times it's reported, and it really just does not respond well to earnings. It's called lower both times. It's turned in results. Now chart doesn't look great. It doesn't respond great to earnings, and now you have throwing some trade tensions, and it just seems like a tougher setup. Compounding the the fact is that options really aren't that cheap either. It's averaged about $1.70 move. The price in about $1.50. So this is probably going to be an avoid for me this time around. Tuesday before the open, Advanced Auto Parts. So looking for about 11 and a half. This is definitely been a less volatile move around earnings recently, and I think you have to go way back to like 2017 to get the last really big like 15 to 20% move. Used to be a crazy one, but it's definitely less so over the last year and a half. The group has been kind of mixed. It does look more susceptible to a downside. As you can see, it's breaking 2019 support near its 52-week low. O'Reilly just had a pretty weak quarter. They missed across the board. So, options are priced closer to the top of what it's been moving recently. But maybe like a speculative bearish bet just because Peer just had a weak report. Chart looks weak, breaking support. Could have maybe downside into like the 130s, low 130s. That's worth keeping an eye on. Tomorrow morning, another big one, JD. So 2.25 is what they're looking for this time around. This is usually a go-to name. Traded the last couple quarters, and I honestly, I really don't know what to make of it here. The last two quarters have been strong. So here and then here, but the problem is like it's rolled over real sharply down, basically back to where it was going into earnings last quarter. So it's got a lot of like work to do on the upside to really get back above some key levels. I'd say like based off the strength of the last two quarters, I'd probably lean bullish, but you would need a pretty big move just to 2.25. You need a pretty big move just to get the money back from the straddle in that. And it's just really tough to say with the overall environment. I mean, they're going to reward this type of pattern with the chart a little bit weaker. Overall kind of like tariff tensions coming back into play. Um, I'm leaning more towards wait and see. I figure if it's good and it pops, maybe it resets some key levels, then maybe we can like revisit the idea possibly for a swing through like a move through like this 52-week high area. So that's what I'm thinking of right now. But this has over the last few quarters been one of the ones we've gone after. That just this time around, just less less I guess less compelling setup a little bit to me. PSN. So this is a newer IPO. Pricing in about 275 or so. Had a pretty strong quarter in June. Its first report as a public company, and it's been a reasonably tight bull flag right around this 37 to 50 level. Um, I feel like last quarter was strong, acting strong. Maybe you're looking for another leg up. The one thing to note with this, though, is that the options are pretty thinly traded, and there's not a lot of liquidity. Really don't do a whole lot of volume on a day-to-day basis, but definitely seems like it favors the bull side coming off a good quarter, so that could be one to put on your radar. Tuesday after the close, Go. So another new issue. It's a grocery outlet. 375 is what's priced in. This is going to be their first report as a public company, so they haven't reported yet. This one's been a pretty tight flag, up around its high as well, kind of like similar to the PSN. Definitely been one of the better recent performers in the IPO space. Another similarity with PSN though is that the options are pretty thinly traded, so it's just there's not a lot of volume, there's not a lot of liquidity, it makes it tough to get in and out. So just from an overall trade perspective, that it kind of makes things a little bit more challenging on this. But I feel like a name like this, it's had a big run. Not really like reinventing the wheel. With their business, this could be a volatile mover. It's like it's up a lot. It's had a big run. Valuation's a little bit high. Maybe this could be something you see 4 or 5 points, priced in like 375. So again, sometimes options are great, but sometimes in situations like this, it kind of makes like the trade a little bit challenging because there's just the spreads are wide, the liquidity is not great. So as much as I think this might have some potential, we'll have to wait and see if the options give you an opportunity to get involved or not. All right, after the close Tuesday, two more Chinese names. So Huya, which is priced in at about 275, and YY, which is priced in at about 5.5. I feel like neither look particularly great, but I'd say maybe favor YY just because it's been a pretty consistent mover when it's reported recently, and the options look low compared to what it's averaged over the last like 3 quarters or so. The chart looks bad. I mean, you can see it's breaking through all sorts of like key support levels, just getting hit straight down into this quarter. So chart looks pretty tough, but the options are a little bit better on the pricing side. So if you can look at one or the other, maybe look at YY. Tilray. This is also Tuesday after the close. Another one, about 5.5 points. The cannabis stocks actually had a pretty good stretch a couple weeks ago. And actually, two of the bigger names are this week, so Tilray and CGC, which I'll talk about in a minute. We've definitely traded Tilray a lot in the past. This one's given some good opportunities. And actually, what worked well last quarter was waiting. So didn't play it on the actual earnings date, but what we did was waited and then waited for like this little like setup, this bullish reversal trend setup, and we hopped on board for that. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Stock has been kind of lifeless for a month or so, and I feel like that idea just kind of fits well again. Maybe wait till see what they say. If it pops, and this time maybe if it gets to like this 100A and sets up like a turn and maybe like another break of this trend, similar to what it did last quarter. So I feel like it worked well then. That'll be the game plan again this week. Wednesday before the open, Canada Goose. So this one seems to be setting up for a short. The 6.25 is about what's priced in this time around. It moved over 15 last quarter, so that's one thing, right? And had a really big bounce off the low, but stalled right underneath like key support, hanging underneath moving averages. Retail is just starting to roll over a bit, and this one's coming off a downbeat quarter. So moved over 15 last time, over 10 points off the low just from June, but they're only pricing in 6.25. So I feel like I'm bearish bias, looking for a move back down, maybe into like the mid to low 30s, potentially. If the numbers aren't great, similar to last time around. Macy's. So $1.85 is what's priced in this week. This will be the first of the brick and mortar names to report. Well, not counting Advanced Auto Parts. So brick and mortar apparel retail names. Chart looks terrible, obviously, and it actually really has not had a bounce in a long time. I gotta go back until the end of last year. So just stock has just been in a really steady downtrend. The problem is that it actually, minus the December holiday, this was the holiday sales update, which came in January. It really hasn't been a big mover. So, even though the options aren't too bad compared to some of the moves it's had in the past, it also hasn't really been that type of name so far this year. And when it comes to like this first week of retail, I like to look around for some sympathy trade ideas. So Target and Kohl's, two big retailers that should react to Macy's and Walmart's later this week. JCPenney, Dillard's. So Target and Kohl's don't report this week, so probably some opportunities for sympathy trades on those two, just because they're next week and they won't have that catalyst premium, right? All right, another IPO. As you can see, a bunch of new issues coming up this week. So Luckin Coffee, 4 points. Is what's expected this time. Well, not this time. This is the first time. It's their first report as a public company, and it just is hanging right around the top of the IPO high. So had a really nice run, kind of consolidating those gains and kind of in a maybe not super tight, but in a flag right at the IPO high. Yes, it is a China name, but at the same time, I mean, this has got a lot of momentum behind it. Definitely different than other names. So it does have some headwinds, but it also could be a real explosive setup if it can get to that 27 area with some volume. So certainly one I think to keep on your radar. It's one. It seems like one of the more interesting setups of the week. Wednesday after the close, CGC. So as was I just mentioned a couple minutes ago. Looking for 3 points this week. I feel like this one could be an interesting one as well, just because the chart is really starting to deteriorate pretty quick. The founding CEO left abruptly. It was hit on earnings last quarter, and it just seems that like 3 points just might end up being low based off of technical setup, the quarter last, the last quarter, the CEO leaving, and then you have room technically down to like the mid 20s, or it's kind of hit real hard over the last month. So just seems that like 3 points might end up being a little bit light on this, just based off of a few things, right? Cisco, this will be one of the big tech reports of the week. 275 is what's priced in. It's actually been on a pretty impressive earnings streak. A few beat and raises in a row, and the stock is actually right back to where it was going into like earnings in May. So that was a good quarter, and it popped back up into like the mid 50s. I guess it wouldn't surprise me if it had some sort of like similar repeat of the pattern, but it could take a little while to like regain some of the momentum that it had, and it's got a few upside congestion levels it needs to kind of get back through. So I feel like based off like the recent reports, maybe seem a little bit more bullish. It's just it's got some work to do to really start to look a little bit better, just because of like this recent slide here. All right, Thursday before the bell. Well, so also Wednesday after the close is NetApp, but they already guided, so I feel like I'm not gonna really entertain that one. Baba is Thursday before the open, so this is but Thursday open, pre-open, and then after the close, probably like combined the biggest day of the week. So 9 points is what they're pricing in, and it really seems like deja vu from last quarter on Baba. I mean, it was hit really hard here. So this was in May, hit really hard on tariff tweets in May, and now it's gotten hit real hard on tariff tweets again. Right, had a muted move to a beat back in May, and I guess I'd really be expecting something kind of along that same lines again. I feel like the number based off last quarter, it's probably end up being pretty solid, but it had a muted response to earnings, and then it fell apart after. So, it's kind of tough. I mean, options aren't super cheap compared to its average move, and it had a muted response last quarter in a similar setup. So, um, it's probably going to be an avoid. I mean, definitely one of the biggest names of the week, but I guess I just don't like the setup that much. I just don't see it like one way or the other. Walmart. So, well, you have Walmart. You also have JCPenney Thursday morning, but Walmart obviously. JCPenney looks terrible. Walmart's the biggest name. 4.5 points. What's priced in? It had a really nice quarter in May, but actually, so it's right here. So it had a nice quarter, but not really a huge move. But then June and July just went on this tear, and actually it's actually pulled back almost nearly all of that entire of that breakout through like 105 area, right? So it's come back down, almost giving back that entire rally. Um, this could be a mover, like a 4.5. It seems like this is like it could either be like a non-event, or it could be like a really big move. I mean, like it's like that seems to be like the MO of Walmart. It's either like 8 to 10 points, or like 2 to 3 points. Like it seems like it's either muted or massive. It's kind of like at least over the last like 2 years, that's how Walmart's behaved. I really don't know which direction to go with this. I mean, great breakout, and then gave it all back. Um, that's why I still think like either Target or Kohl's, they don't report next week, or they don't report this week. They report next week, so the options are a little bit lower priced. They don't have that catalyst premium, so again, this is why like I look for these sympathy trades, just stuff that should be trading at a little bit of a discount because they don't have the catalyst. So I feel like Walmart could be interesting, but at the same time, the way I might approach all of these retail names this week is either by looking at like Target and Kohl's options. All right, Thursday after the close, AMAT. So you have a couple chip stocks Thursday after the close. 275. So it's priced in. So it's this and Nvidia, which I'll get to in a second. But so of the two semi reports, I'd say Nvidia actually probably more interesting of the two. AMAT's been kind of spinning around. The tariff talk. So it rallied when the peers rallied, and it dropped on the tariff talks, and it's been kind of going up and down with each peer that's reported, right? Overall, just really not like in a particularly like interesting area. I mean, just kind of in no man's land ahead of earnings. I'd say like the last major move was this quarter last year, so it was here back in August. Um, so at 275, they're not too expensive. So maybe it's a cheap speculative shot, but again, don't have a whole ton of conviction with that setup. Nvidia to me seems a little bit more interesting. Priced it in 12 and a half. It's under all near-term moving averages, which you can see here. And it seems like it has maybe room either way, right? So Intel, Nvidia, been lagging. AMD just off a 52-week high. Options aren't too cheap on Nvidia based off what it's averaged over the last few quarters, but it looks like you have, if it's weak, then there could be room down into like the high to mid 130s. And on the upside, you got a couple pretty clean gaps up into like the low to mid 160s. So right there, that's like, 10 to 15 points either way. It's priced in at 12 and a half. So maybe to get risk down, you look at like spreads, like strangle with spreads in either direction, just to get that overall risk down. But it does seem like it could set up for like maybe like 15 points higher or about 15 points lower. And then last but not least, Deer, Friday before the open. So missed and guided lower in May, right? And then it rode the market all the way back up to its 52-week high, and now it's gotten hit again off the tariff talk. Cat just had a nasty report, a miss and guide lower. So I would definitely think, maybe more negative on Deer this week after missing and guiding lower last quarter. Cat missed and guided lower. It dropped 12 last quarter, so I'd say maybe if it's bad again, you could see a move back down to like the 140, high 130s, right? It seems like it's under pretty much any near-term support, and like the next major levels down in like the 138 to 140 range. So it could have a path down there. Plus, like Cat's actually trading below that June low, so it could play catch up to its peer if it's as bad as it was back in May. All right. So, like I said earlier in the video, definitely some big names. Although a lot of the setups are a little bit more challenging, just not as clean as some of the past weeks. So, got to be more specific, got to be more selective. And maybe you got to be a little more nimble, right? Like maybe quicker exits on the, quicker profit taking, but also quicker hitting of their stops, right? Just because the market's still pretty some wide ranging days, and it seems like we've had a lot of reversals. So, a little bit quicker to like take money off the table. That's the plan, at least until things slow down. All right. So, hope you guys have a wonderful night. Best of luck with all these ideas for the week, and I'll talk to you all tomorrow.